Cecily Vane had curtsied wrong in front of 300 people, and she knew it the moment her knee touched the floor at the wrong angle, her borrowed gown pooling around her like a collapsed souffle. And the laughter began. Not the polite, muffled kind behind gloved hands, but the open, delighted kind that society reserves for those it has already decided do not belong. She had come to the Harcastle Gala for one reason, and it had nothing to do with dancing. Lord Harcastle had in his possession a promissory note signed by her late father, a document that, if presented to the courts before the end of the month, would strip her of the modest house in Wiltshire that was the only thing standing between her and complete destitution. She needed to find that note, and she needed to find it tonight, because tomorrow, Harcastle's solicitor would be on the first coach to London, and the day after that, Cecily Vane would have nowhere to sleep. So she had borrowed a gown from her neighbor Mrs. Pollock, who was 3 inches shorter and considerably broader, and she had walked into Harcastle House with her chin level and her left hand pressed flat against her thigh to keep the bodice from shifting, and she had curtsied to Lady Harcastle with the absolute conviction that she could manage it, and she had been wrong. The laughter spread through the ballroom like a stone dropped in still water. Lady Harcastle's expression did not change, which was somehow worse than if it had. Two young women near the punch bowl turned to each other with the particular delight of those who have spent the evening waiting for something like this to happen. An older gentleman with magnificent side whiskers said something to his companion that Cecily could not hear, but the companion's subsequent snort told her enough. She rose from the floor with what dignity remained to her, which was not much, and became aware that someone nearby had not laughed. He was standing at the edge of the room, slightly apart from everyone else in the way that some people stand in crowds, not because they are shy, but because the crowd has not yet decided what to do with them. He was perhaps 30 years old in appearance, though something about the set of his shoulders suggested a man who had been 30 for a very long time. He wore a plain dark coat with no decoration, which was unusual for the Harcastle Gala, and he was watching her with an expression she could not immediately name. Not pity, not amusement, something closer to recognition. She looked away from him and focused on the task she had come here to perform. The study was on the second floor. She had established this from Mrs. Pollock's housekeeper, who had a cousin in Harcastle's kitchen, who had mentioned in passing that the master kept his important papers in the mahogany cabinet beside the window that overlooked the garden. Cecily had memorized this as carefully as she memorized anything. She had a habit, inherited from her father, of committing useful facts to memory, the way other women collected calling cards. She waited until the dancing began in earnest, found the servants' staircase behind the cloakroom, and went up. The study smelled of pipe tobacco and old leather, and the particular mustiness of papers that had not been touched in some time. Cecily moved quickly, pulling a small candle stub from her glove. She had come prepared, and began working through the cabinet by its light. "You are remarkably calm," said a voice from the doorway, "for someone committing a felony." Cecily did not scream. She considered it, but it seemed inefficient. She turned to find the man from the ballroom leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed, watching her with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. "I am not committing a felony," she said. "I am retrieving property that was taken from my family under fraudulent circumstances. There is a legal distinction." "Is there?" he said. It was not quite a question. "Yes," she said, and turned back to the cabinet. There was a pause. Then he said, "What are you looking for specifically?" "A promissory note, dated the 14th of March, 1851, my father's signature." She rifled through a second folder. "Why are you up here?" "The same reason, more or less," he said, "though not your father's note. There is a document in this room that concerns me rather more directly." He uncrossed his arms and walked into the study, with the unhurried ease of someone who had broken into a great many rooms and found it unremarkable. "Harcastle has been collecting things he should not have. Your note is one. There is also a deed of transfer for a property in Derbyshire that was signed under duress by a man who is no longer alive to contest it. and a letter that would be of considerable interest to certain people if it were made public. Cecily stopped rifling. You are also here to steal from him. I prefer retrieve, he said, with the faint suggestion of a dry smile. Since you established the legal distinction, she looked at him properly for the first time. Up close, his face was striking in a way that was difficult to account for. Not handsome exactly, but precise, as though someone had taken great care with the arrangement of his features. His eyes were an unusual color, dark amber in the candlelight, and they moved over the room with a thoroughness that suggested he had already catalogued most of it before she noticed him. Your name, she said. Morrow, he said. Piers Morrow. And you are Miss Vane, whose curtsy provided the evening's entertainment. Thank you, she said, with perfect flatness, for the reminder. I was not laughing, he said. No, she said. I noticed. She turned back to the cabinet. If we are both looking through the same cabinet, we should divide the folders. You take the left side, I will take the right. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you are remarkably practical for someone who just curtsied into a ballroom floor. The curtsy is behind me, she said. The promissory note is in front of me. I find it useful to focus on what is in front of me. He took the left side of the cabinet without further comment. They worked in silence for several minutes, which was, Cecily thought, a great deal more comfortable than it had any right to be. She found her father's note first. She recognized his handwriting immediately, the looping capital V, the way he pressed too hard on the downstrokes so the letters were slightly indented in the paper. She folded it into thirds and tucked it inside her glove, against her palm. Found it? Morrow said without looking up. Yes, she said. Good. He extracted a letter from beneath a sheaf of estate papers and held it briefly to the candlelight. His expression, reading it, was not one she could easily describe. Something between satisfaction and a very old, very quiet anger. He folded it and put it in his coat pocket. Then the door at the bottom of the servants' stair opened, and they heard Lord Harcastle's voice, and the voice of another man, his solicitor presumably, and the sound of boots on the wooden steps coming up. Window, Cecily said. It is 30 feet to the garden, Morrow said. The trellis, she said. On the left side. I looked at the exterior of the house before I came in. He looked at her. Of course you did. They were out the window and halfway down the trellis when Harcastle opened the study door and found it empty, the cabinet standing open, and the candle still warm. The garden was cold and smelled of wet earth and box hedge, and Cecily's borrowed gown had acquired a long tear along the left seam from the trellis. She stood at the bottom of it, assessing the damage, and decided it was a manageable problem for tomorrow. Morrow dropped to the grass beside her. You planned the trellis exit before you went in, he said. I plan exits before I plan entrances, she said. It is a habit. A useful one. He looked back up at the lit window. He will know something was taken. He will be looking for whoever was in that room. He will be looking for a thief, she said. He will not be looking for a woman whose curtsy he watched from across the ballroom. People do not generally expect the person they laughed at to be the person who robbed them. Morrow was quiet for a moment. Then he said, That is genuinely clever. I know, she said. He looked at her with that expression she still could not entirely name. Where are you going now? Home, she said. Wiltshire, tomorrow morning. Harcastle's solicitor is also going to Wiltshire tomorrow morning, he said. First coach, he has a copy of the note. Cecily stopped. A copy, Morrow said, not without sympathy. Harcastle is thorough, he made two. The original is in your glove. The copy is with the solicitor, a man named Gideon Farr, and it will be in front of a magistrate before the week is out. The garden was very quiet. Somewhere above them, in the lit study, they could hear Harcastle's voice, raised now, with the particular quality of a man who has discovered a loss, and has not yet decided whom to blame for it. How do you know about the copy? Cecily said. Because Harcastle told Farr about it at dinner, Morrow said, and I was seated 3 tables away with rather good hearing. She looked at him. Rather good hearing. Exceptional, actually, he said. Among other things. She decided to examine that statement later. Then we need to find Gideon Farr before he reaches the magistrate, she said. And we need to find him before he reaches Wiltshire. Morrow said. You need Hardcastle occupied and unable to pursue you for that letter, she said. I need Farr stopped before the copy reaches the courts. If Hardcastle is chasing me, he is not chasing you. And if Farr is stopped, Hardcastle loses his legal instrument. These things are connected. He was quiet for a moment that stretched longer than she expected. You work that out very quickly. I work most things out quickly, she said. It is the curtsey I cannot manage. Something shifted in the set of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but the structural precursor to one. All right, Miss Vane, he said. We find Farr. They left the garden through a gap in the hedge that Cecily had also identified before entering, and she did not mention this because she felt she had made the point sufficiently. The coaching inn at the edge of the village was called the Three Crowns, and it was where Gideon Farr was staying the night before his morning departure. Morrow knew this because he had been watching Hardcastle's household for 3 weeks, which he mentioned in the same tone one might use to mention that one had been watching the weather. Cecily found this both useful and faintly alarming, and filed it alongside exceptional hearing and 30 feet to the garden as things she intended to think about more carefully when she had time. The inn's taproom was warm and smelled of tallow and sawdust and something being roasted that had been roasting for some time. Farr was easy to identify. A compact, precise man in his middle 40s with the particular air of a solicitor who has never in his life done anything he was not paid to do. He sat in the corner with a leather satchel on the bench beside him, drinking something hot and reading a document with the focused attention of a man who considers leisure a professional failing. The satchel, Cecily said quietly. The satchel, Morrow agreed. He will not leave it unattended. No. So we need him to leave the room. Morrow looked at her. Do you have a plan for that? I always have a plan, she said, which was only partially true, but she had found that saying it with conviction was most of the work. Go and speak to him. Tell him you are also traveling to Wiltshire tomorrow. Ask him about the road conditions. Be tedious about it. Keep him talking for 4 minutes. Why 4 minutes? Because that is how long I need, she said. Also, you have an interesting face. People talk to interesting faces. He blinked. It was the first time she had seen him look genuinely surprised. That is the most ambiguous compliment I have received in a very long time. It was not a compliment, she said. It was an operational assessment. Go. He went. He was, she noted, rather good at it. He approached Farr with the easy confidence of a man who had introduced himself to strangers for centuries, which was a thought she pushed aside immediately in favor of watching the satchel. She slipped around the edge of the room, keeping to the side that the candle sconces did not quite reach, and sat down on the bench beside the satchel with the unhurried ease of someone who had simply found a comfortable seat. The satchel's clasp was a simple brass hook. She had it open in under a minute. She had a facility with clasps, inherited from a childhood spent trying to open her father's locked desk drawers. The copy of the note was in the first inner pocket. She recognized the handwriting as Farr's, neat, professional, utterly without character. She folded it into her glove beside the original and closed the satchel. Morrow excused himself from Farr with the smooth efficiency of a man ending a conversation he had never wanted to begin, and they were out of the taproom before Farr looked up from his document. Outside, the night air was sharp. Cecily leaned against the wall of the inn and breathed. 4 minutes, Morrow said. Precisely. I counted, she said. He looked at her with something that was beginning, she thought, to be close to respect. You are very good at this. I have been managing difficult situations with insufficient resources for most of my adult life, she said. It develops certain skills. She pulled both documents from her glove and looked at them in the thin light from the inn's window. The original and the copy, both in her hand. Without these, Hardcastle has no legal claim. He can still cause trouble, but not through the courts. He will cause trouble through other means, Morrow said. He is not a man who accepts losses gracefully. No, she said. I expect he will send someone after us. He already has, Morrow said, and his voice had changed, not louder, not sharper, but with a quality of attention that made her look up. Two men were coming around the corner of the inn, large men, in the employ of someone who could afford large men, moving with the particular purposefulness of people who had been given a description and a direction, and told to be efficient about it. Morrow stepped in front of her, not pushing her back, simply moving forward, placing himself between her and the approaching men with the automatic ease of someone for whom this was a familiar arrangement. Go to the stable, he said quietly. The chestnut mare on the left is mine. She will let you ride her. I am not leaving you here, she said. Miss Vane, if they take you, they take the letter, she said. And then Hardcastle has something to hold over you. We established that our problems are connected. That means our solutions should be as well. He turned to look at her, just briefly, with an expression she had not seen on him before. Something that was almost, she thought, discomfort. I can manage 2 men, he said. Without drawing the attention of everyone in the inn? He paused. The innkeeper's wife, Cecily said. I saw her when we came in. She has the look of a woman who keeps accounts very carefully. Go and tell her that Lord Hardcastle's men are here to collect a debt from one of her guests, and that there will be a scene in her tap room if she does not intervene. She will not want a scene. She will send them off herself. It will take 30 seconds and leave no mark on anyone. There was a pause. The 2 men had stopped at the corner, watching. You have been in difficult situations, Morrow said, for a very long time. I have, she said. Go. He went. She watched him speak to the innkeeper's wife, who was, as Cecily had assessed, a woman who ran her establishment with the precision of a military campaign and the tolerance of someone who had seen every variety of human foolishness and preferred not to see any of it in her tap room. She came out herself, spoke 2 sentences to Hardcastle's men, and they left. It was, Cecily thought, a very satisfying 30 seconds. She and Morrow walked back toward the village in silence for some time. The night had deepened around them, and the road was lit only by the moon, which was doing its best but was not entirely adequate to the task. You were not afraid of those men, Morrow said eventually. I was, she said. I simply did not have time to let it interfere. He considered this. Most people let it interfere. Most people have not had sufficient practice at being in situations where they cannot afford to. She paused. You said you can manage 2 men. What did you mean by that? He was quiet for longer than the question warranted. Morrow, she said. I meant that I am stronger than I appear, he said. How much stronger? Another pause. Considerably. She stopped walking. He stopped a moment later and turned to face her. She had been adding things up since the garden. The exceptional hearing. The 30-foot drop that had not troubled him. The way he had moved in that room. Not just quietly, but with a precision that ordinary people did not have, as though he knew exactly where his body was in space at every moment. The pallor of his skin in the candlelight, which she had attributed to indoor living and then reconsidered. The fact that he had been watching Hardcastle's household for 3 weeks, and as far as she could tell, had not needed to sleep during that time. How old are you? She said. He looked at her for a long moment. The moonlight made his face very clear and very still. That is a complicated question, he said. I am not asking for an approximate answer, she said. I am asking because I have been assembling evidence for the past 2 hours, and I would like to know if my conclusion is correct before I continue drawing it. He was quiet. I am not frightened, she said, which was not entirely accurate, but was accurate enough. I am practical, and practically speaking, what you are changes certain things about our situation, and does not change others. I would like to know which is which. He said, "My conclusion is that you already know." "I want to hear you say it," she said. He looked at the road ahead of them and then back at her. "I am very old," he said. "I have been Piers Morrow for 40 years. Before that, I was someone else, and before that, someone else again. I have been a soldier and a physician and a scholar and a great many other things that did not suit me particularly. I do not accumulate wealth. I do not hold titles. I move when people begin to notice that I am not aging, and I find a new name, and I begin again." "And the rest of it," she said. "Yes," he said. "The rest of it." She stood very still on the dark road. The moon went behind a cloud and came back again. "Animal blood," he said, before she could ask. "Or willing donors, though I find willing donors complicate things socially. I do not." He stopped. "I have never hurt anyone. That is not what I am." She believed him. She was not entirely sure why she believed him, but she had a reliable instinct for honesty, honed by years of dealing with people who wanted things from her, and he was not performing. He was simply telling her a difficult truth in the most direct way available to him. "All right," she said. He blinked. "All right. You have exceptional hearing and considerable strength, and you have been alive long enough to know things about Hardcastle that I do not," she said. "These are assets. I have the note and the copy and a working knowledge of how solicitors think. These are also assets. We still need to ensure that Hardcastle cannot simply produce a third document, or find another legal instrument, or send more men." "You are remarkably calm," he said, for the second time that evening. "You said that already," she said. "It bears repeating." She looked at him. In the moonlight, his face had that quality she had noticed in the ballroom, precise, careful, as though it had been arranged by someone who understood proportion, but had perhaps forgotten to include the ordinary wear of a lived life. He was watching her with an attention that was not predatory, but was very, very thorough. "Are you afraid of me?" he said. It came out with a directness that she thought cost him something. "I was," she said. "For about 30 seconds, while I was working out whether my conclusion was correct. After that, I was mostly concerned with Hardcastle's men." She paused. "I think the fear was reasonable. I think it was also not the most important thing." He said nothing. She had the sense that he was not accustomed to people arriving at that conclusion. "We should keep moving," she said. "Hardcastle will try something else before morning." She was right. He always was, she would discover, not in the way of men who are used to being right, but in the way of someone who has learned to read situations the way other people read text, quickly and without sentiment. They had not gone a quarter mile when they heard the coach. Not the morning coach. This was a private vehicle, moving fast, and it turned off the main road onto the lane that led toward the village, which meant it had come from Hardcastle House, and it knew where they were going. "The letter," Cecily said. "Yes," Morrow said. "He wants it back." They left the road and moved through the field beside it, which was cold and wet and smelled of turned earth and something that might have been sheep, but was not currently visible. Cecily's borrowed gown was already ruined. She did not waste time thinking about it. "What is in the letter?" she said, keeping her voice low. "A confession," he said. "Hardcastle's own hand. He wrote it to someone he trusted, years ago, believing it would never be seen. It describes how he acquired 3 properties, including the one in Derbyshire. The methods were not legal. If that letter reaches the right person, he loses everything," Morrow said. "Not just the properties, his standing, his credibility, his ability to do what he has been doing to people like your father." Cecily thought about this as they moved through the wet grass. Who is the right person? "Sir Edmund Farley," he said. "He sits on the county bench. He has been trying to build a case against Hardcastle for 2 years. He lacks evidence." "You were going to bring him the letter." "That was the plan," Morrow said. Where does he live? 4 miles north. She stopped. Then we go north. He stopped beside her. The coach cannot follow us through a field, she said. And 4 miles is manageable on foot. How long until dawn? He looked at the sky with the ease of someone who has read skies for a very long time. 3 hours. Then we have time, she said, and started walking north. He fell into step beside her. The field was uneven, and the going was slow. And after a while the coach sounds faded behind them, and there was only the sound of their footsteps in the wet grass, and the distant, occasional cry of something nocturnal in the hedgerow. You are not going to ask me anything else, he said. It was not quite a question. I have many questions, she said. I am saving them for when we are not walking through a field in the dark. That implies you intend to be in a situation where we are not walking through a field in the dark. It implies, she said carefully, that I am not yet finished with this conversation. Whether that constitutes an intention is a separate matter. He was quiet for a moment. You are very precise with language. I am precise with most things, she said. Except curtseying, apparently. He made a sound that was, she was fairly certain, a suppressed laugh. It changed his face entirely, briefly, like a lamp lit behind a window, and then shuddered again. The curtsey, he said, was not as bad as they made it. It was, she said. I know it was. I felt it happen. But thank you for the diplomatic revision. I was not being diplomatic, he said. I was being accurate. It was imperfect. It was not catastrophic. The catastrophe was the room's response to it, which was disproportionate and unkind, and said considerably more about the room than about you. She walked for a few steps without answering. The moon was better out here, away from the trees, and she could see the field stretching ahead of them, pale and wide. You were watching me, she said, before I noticed you. Yes, he said, without apology. Why? He thought about this. Because you did not apologize, he said. When they laughed. You stood up and you looked at the room and you did not apologize or explain or make yourself smaller. You simply continued. I found that interesting. I was terrified, she said. I know, he said. That is what made it interesting. They reached Sir Edmund Farley's house as the sky was beginning to consider the possibility of morning, not yet committing to it, but thinking seriously about the matter. The house was dark, as houses are at 4 a.m, but Morrow knocked with the confidence of someone who knows that the importance of a message outweighs the inconvenience of the hour. Sir Edmund appeared in a dressing gown, with the expression of a man who has been woken at 4 a.m. and is reserving judgment on whether it was justified. He was perhaps 60, with the particular look of a magistrate who has spent decades watching people lie to him and has developed a reliable sense for when they are not. He read the letter by the light of the candle his housekeeper held, and his expression changed 3 times, first skepticism, then recognition, then the careful stillness of a man who has just found what he has been looking for. Where did you get this? He said. From Hardcastle's study, Morrow said. Tonight. Sir Edmund looked at him, and then at Cecily, who was standing slightly behind Morrow with a torn gown and mud on her boots, and the 2 copies of her father's promissory note in her glove. And you are? Cecily Vane, she said. My father was one of Hardcastle's victims. I have the original note and the copy. Without them, he has no legal claim to my property. With your letter, he has no legal standing at all. Sir Edmund looked at the letter again. This will take some days to act on, he said. The legal process. I understand the legal process, Cecily said. I am asking only that you begin it, and that you issue a notice to Hardcastle's solicitor, a Mr. Gideon Farr, that the matter is under review and no documents concerning Hardcastle's properties are to be filed pending the inquiry. Sir Edmund studied her. You know the procedure. My father was a solicitor, she said. before Harcastle ruined him. There was a long pause. Sir Edmund folded the letter carefully and held it against his chest. "Come inside," he said. "Both of you. I will need statements." They gave their statements by candlelight in Sir Edmund's study, which smelled of law books and cold tea, and Cecily answered every question with the precision she brought to everything, and by the time they were finished, the sky outside the window had made its decision about morning and was proceeding with it in earnest. Sir Edmund saw them out with the gravity of a man who has just been handed a case he has wanted for 2 years. "Harcastle will be served notice by the end of the week," he said. "The properties will be frozen pending inquiry. Your house in Wiltshire, Miss Vane, is safe." She stood on his front step and looked at the morning, which was grey and damp and entirely beautiful. Behind her she heard Morrow say something quiet to Sir Edmund, too quiet for her to make out, and Sir Edmund's brief response. Then Morrow came to stand beside her on the step. "You should know," he said, "that I told him the letter was obtained by lawful means." "It was obtained by trespassing," she said. "It was obtained by a concerned citizen with knowledge of criminal activity," he said. "The distinction is legally defensible." "Is it?" "I have been a solicitor myself," he said, "twice, in different centuries. I am reasonably confident." She looked at him. The morning light was not kind to most people, but it was honest, and in it he looked exactly as he had looked in the study, precise, careful, and carrying something that she thought had been there a very long time, and had not, until recently, had anywhere particular to put itself. "You have been a great many things," she said. "Yes," he said. "A soldier, a physician, a scholar, a solicitor, twice, among others." "What are you now?" He considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "At the moment," he said, "I am someone standing on a magistrate's front step at 5 in the morning with mud on his boots and no particular place to be." "That is a very unsatisfying answer." "It is an honest one." She looked out at the lane, which was beginning to show the first signs of the ordinary day. A cart in the distance, a dog investigating something in the hedge, the smell of bread from somewhere she could not see. "I am going back to Wiltshire," she said. "I have a house to put in order. There are papers to file, and I expect the garden has gone entirely to ruin while I have been occupied with other matters. And Mrs. Pollock will want her gown returned, which is going to be a difficult conversation." "It is a considerable tear," he said without any particular sympathy. "It is a catastrophic tear," she said. "And the hem is beyond saving. I shall have to buy her a new one, which means I shall need to find some form of income before the end of the month, which means—" She stopped. "I am listing my problems aloud. I apologize, it is a habit." "I don't mind," he said. "I have exceptional hearing. I would have heard them regardless." She looked at him sideways. He was watching the lane with an expression she recognized now. The one that was not quite a smile, but was the shape of one, waiting. "You could come to Wiltshire," she said. It came out more directly than she had intended, but she had decided some time around the third field that she was tired of saying things indirectly. "Not permanently, or permanently if that suited. I am not making an offer of any particular kind. I am noting that you have no particular place to be, and Wiltshire has a garden that needs considerable attention. And I find your company functional, and occasionally almost pleasant." "Occasionally almost pleasant," he said. "I shall have that engraved." "I mean it," she said. "I am not good at—" She stopped again.